Welcome back to Low Buck Builds. In today's video, we're going to do a couple things here on the Suburban to save some money. We're taking it to the shop to get the transmission swapped out finally. And there's a couple things I can do here at home and save a couple $100. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Low Buck Builds. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to swap out a battery in a 2017 Suburban. This one's a little bit different than most of them you see online, as you have to remove the coolant reservoir and the air box out of the way in order to get the battery out. I worked on this weekend. It was kind of a pain, so I decided to make a video just so it could save you time by watching it. This video is going to be quick, down and dirty, nothing fancy. So let's get to it. I should have been a fishing YouTuber. So as I mentioned before, there's a lot of things in the way of getting to the battery. Right here's our hot post, and then there's this box on top. We gotta remove those. But before we do that, we gotta remove the support bar up top. So let's go ahead and get some wrenches and we'll get to that first. If I remember right, I believe these are both 13mm bolts. There's 3 of them. One towards the front of the car, one towards the rear of the car, and one in the middle that you'll have to remove. Come out pretty easily. I just used a ratchet. Sorry for all the voiceover. I didn't have my lapel mic plugged in all the way, so I lost all the audio for this video and the previous video. Hindsight, it would probably be easier to remove the middle bolt first, but I didn't see it whenever I originally did this, so I would recommend removing that one first. All 3 of these bolts are 13mm, plus there's another small support bar we're going to remove. It's also 13mm. And lastly, even the battery hold down bolt is a 13mm. So basically for this job, you need a 13mm and a 10mm. I used ratchets for most of it, but you can use a small impact if you want. So next you want to use a 10mm ratchet and disconnect both of the battery cables. And then remove this electrical box on top. There's a clip in towards the left side of the vehicle and clip towards the right side of the vehicle, and then it just pops off out of the way. After removing it, I just kind of pinned it back behind the support bar just to get it out of the way so I could do the rest of the work. Next, after that, I went ahead and removed the ground cable using the 10mm. And then the next step will be, there's a 13mm back behind the battery towards the driver's side, the right side. And that holds down the clamp that clamps the battery in. So you want to remove that. You're going to need a long extension and a 13mm socket. At this point, I grabbed the mini impact so I could get this sped up a little bit. And now we got the clamp out holding the battery down, so the battery is completely loose. Now we need to move this coolant reservoir out of the way. It has 2 10mm bolts. What's a pain is the front one you can get to, the back one, the air box is in the way, so you end up having to remove the air box in order to remove the coolant reservoir in order to remove the battery. So here I'm removing the 10mm bolt for the coolant reservoir. You have one bolt on the left side and one bolt on the right side. Again, you can't get to the right-hand bolt for the coolant reservoir because it's covered up by the airbox. So next step's going to be to go ahead and take the airbox apart and remove it out of the way. There will be 4 screws on the air box. You'll have to remove the steel clamp on the air hose, and you'll have to remove the one electrical connection for the mass airflow sensor. Then just remove the hose, remove the box top, remove the air filter, and then whenever you get inside, you'll have to be really careful because the clips will break. I actually broke a couple of mine. You'll have to flip those down and pull the bottom part of the air box out. Before we get to all that, you got to remove this small structure bar here. It's 210 millimeters. The second bolt is hidden underneath this plastic shroud, so you'll have to take off like 4 or 5 of these clips just so we can move the shroud up high enough to get to the second bolt. Again, this is why it's such a pain just to remove the battery in this thing. I have the special tool for doing these, but I find that a flathead screwdriver just works better. You just put it in a little slot that's cut out, pop up the middle part, pull it out, then pull the clip out. It's pretty easy. You'll have to remove these 4 so that you can lift it up high enough so you can get your socket underneath and take out the longest fine thread bolt you ever seen. It takes 20 minutes to undo. And once you get that bolt finally out, then you go ahead and remove that structure bar out of the way. Then you can go ahead and remove the air box. Like I said before, be real careful because the clips, once you remove the filter to get the box out, are going to be really brittle, especially if it's as old as mine, and you can easily break them. Once you get that out of the way, finally you have access to the other bolt for the coolant overflow. And you can finally get that out of the way, and then you can finally pull the battery out. I'm not sponsored by Rural King, but I do get my batteries there. These have a 5-year warranty and they're half the price of AutoZone and everywhere else. The battery for this car I bought for $130. It's got a 5-year warranty, and I mean, at AutoZone it would have been $265 and still had a 5-year warranty. So if you're looking for a good deal on a battery, I do recommend a Rural Kings. Of course, it's everything in reverse. We got the battery back in. Now we're going to go ahead and do the coolant overflow, put that back in with the two 10 millimeters. One's going to be a nut and the other one's going to be a full bolt. As always with 10 millimeter, make sure you don't go too nuts over torquing them, especially with these plastics, they'll crack. So just give it good and snug, but don't go crazy torquing it. After you get those 2 bolts back in and tightened up, then we're going to go ahead and do the battery clamp next while everything's out of the way. So you got to dig out that clamping piece and that bolt. I believe it's 13 millimeter, and go ahead and put that back in. I did use the mini impact to tighten these up to kind of speed up the process, but very carefully, don't crank on it because again, these plastics will crack, especially when they're older, like on this car. Next, we're going to go ahead and install the bottom part of the air box. Again, be careful when you're putting it in there because those clips can break if you push them in the wrong way. Next, go ahead and throw your air filter back in and the top cover, and go ahead and reconnect your air hose, and then make sure you reconnect the electrical connection for the mass airflow sensor. I forgot to do this, and then my light popped on when I test started it, so make sure you remember to put that connector back on. After getting everything lined back up, go ahead and throw your top 4 screws in and tighten up your hose clamp, and the airbox will be set. Again, make sure not to over torque these. I mean, these plastics will crack. Next, go ahead and reinstall your structure bar, the small one. So go ahead and throw both those 10mm bolts back in there and tighten them back up. Make sure with these to get them fairly tight. Don't go super nuts and crank on them, but they should be pretty good and snug. They're made to handle some torque. Next, go ahead and reinstall your clips back in the front plastic cover. And lastly, go ahead and install your terminals, your top electrical box cover, and then that last structure bar. For some reason, I didn't film that at the end, but then you're done and everything's set. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you like videos like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.